project for citizen science monitoring, and I'm really excited about this program for several reasons. One is because Ocean City Flooding Committee is working with the city. That's a big step. The DEP is helping us as well, and they're guiding this project. That's a huge step. But I think the thing that really kind of gets me the most excited, other than the citizen participation, is that all three of our schools are now going to be involved in this as well. And that gets me real excited for particularly girls in science. So that's exciting. This is great for us for a number of reasons, because citizens having the ability to have a say in their community and to be able to tell the city and the state what's going on where you live is important, and that's what people have been asking for. They want to be heard and they want to make a difference, and this is going to do that, I think. Now, part of this is sort of like a sub thing, is the IC Change app. And anybody who hasn't, if you could please go to your app store and just look up IC Change and download the app. Then whenever you see anything, whether it's good, it's bad, it doesn't have to be flooding, it could be anything. Post your climate conditions on there whenever you get the chance from wherever you are. If you go on vacation to Italy, post it. You know, well, maybe not Italy, but, you know, within the continental United States. So it's, you know, we're doing two things. Now, that program is going to provide global information to a network of mostly scientists and environmentalists. This program that we're really here today to talk about is going to provide information, data, and hopefully financial rewards for us just here on our island. The information we provide will tell the city where we're flooding the worst and when and how long, and it'll tell the state that. These maps will then be adjusted, I think, according to our data. We will also get some certain credits, some for having the school participate, but we'll get a lot of credits, CRS credits for our flood insurance, and maybe Frank can talk more about that with the city, but that's a big deal. The fact that the citizens are participating is going to bring something special to this program for the city, and it is unlike any other. And Matt and Rick, our DEP guys, will tell you about that. There is no other program like this, so we're all in this together. We're learning and we're building this program together, all to benefit the city, and I think that's great. So without further ado, thank you guys for coming. Follow us on the Facebook page, download the app, and I'll introduce, who wants to go first, Frank or Matt? Frank Donato from the city.
Thank you. Hi everyone, good afternoon. Happy Friday. It's good to be here today. And on behalf of the city, we're excited to partner with the OCNJ Flooding Group, and it's been great to get to know Matt and Rick from the DEP, who are going to speak next. And to, I think I was just saying to Rick, we're the first town out of the chute for this program that the DEP has been offering and has started to promote throughout the state. So it sounds like we're going to be the pilot moving forward for this program, and I think we have some good ideas that we've already been able to incorporate, and we'll get this thing started and get everybody's cameras ready and start to document some flooding. So, and I think it'll be a great way to complement some of the information that we already have on our website now, and the way that we kind of archive and document flooding events. And let's face it, I mean, for whatever reason, particularly in these past 10 years, these flooding events seem to be more often and more severe. So I think it's great that we're kind of taking the bull by the horns, and between citizens, taxpayers, residents, agencies like the DEP and us internally at the city are able to work together collectively to mitigate this as much as possible. So that being said, I put together a little packet of information I handed out. A lot of the stuff is what I intend to show online, but I just wanted to have some copies in case anything is grainy or tough to see online. So first and foremost, the project that we are about to embark on involves marking telephone poles in select areas, primarily where the volunteers have raised their hands in proximity to their houses, that are going to be able to take pictures and document flooding events. Flooding is notated or marked by different levels. particularly minor, moderate, and major. And that coincides with elevations in the mean low water scale. So the first 3 pages are, and they're being shipped today. I ordered them about a month ago, but it took a little longer to fill the order because instead of just the plain old bands, I had them custom worded so that when they are wrapped around the telephone poles, even anybody that's not associated with the program, it'll make some sense as to what these bands mean on the telephone poles once they're placed. So 5.3 feet mean low water, that's the abbreviation, MLLW, is the designated level for what they call minor tidal flooding. And this all coincides with how the National Weather Service puts out flood warnings, which I'll get into in a minute. The next page, so that's going to be a white band. That would be the lowest of the 3 bands on the telephone poles. The next band is orange, and that's 6.3 feet mean low water. That denotes what they call moderate tidal flooding. So we're getting higher in severity here. Last but not least, in red, 7.3 feet is major tidal flooding. What we just had this past Saturday was a hair under major tidal flooding. It came in at 7.25. So the goal, obviously, is to be able to document these flooding events as the floodwaters rise on the telephone pole. We want to see where the water peaks at in relation to one of these bands. Hopefully it's not approaching the red one too often. But we're certainly, we know we're going to see plenty of minor and moderate frequencies. And the goal is to document with a picture when that tide peaks. And that's what we're going to talk about, is trying to figure out when high tide is generally going to peak in your neighborhood, because it can vary from the north end of the island to the south end of the island. And really that's the goal, and a date stamp, and I think Matt's going to get a little more of what the DEP would like to see as far as what information would accompany that picture, like the weather conditions, the wind, and things like that. And there's a lot of information on our website that'll help you to be able to fill in the rest of the information that they're looking to gather. So as far as the city's website, there's a couple of different pages on our website that I think everybody in this group would be interested in. First, under Citizen Services, if you were to hover there, we have a page called Flood Smart. This is where we do put a lot of the information that we collect that gets us points towards that CRS program that Suzanne mentioned, which is the program that gets everybody in town a discount on their flood insurance. There is a library, a catalog of all different categories down here. Elevation certificates for a lot of people's homes in town, and flood maps and warning systems, information on flood insurance and flood safety. There's a ton of information here that I just wanted to kind of direct your attention to for a second. But what I'm going to do is because for my purposes it's a little more in order of how I want to present, I want to hover over departments here and go over to the emergency management page. A lot of the information is as far as weather and tides, is repetitive on these 2 pages, but this one is, like I said, for my purposes today, a little more organized in how I want to show it. So the next page in your packet, which would be number 4, page number 4 looks like this. That's a picture of what the tides look like for today and this coming week at 9th Street. And that is the second link down here. Estimated tide chart for Ocean City, New Jersey. So if you were to click on that and scroll down here, and this reports in mean low water, so it is the same as the telephone bands. You see the red blinking dot there is on the left-hand side of that cone that's going up. So what does that mean? That means the tide is on its way up right now, okay? And when it peaks, it'll hit the top of that cone, and today's tide is going to be 4 feet mean low water, right? So when it hits high tide, that means it's 1.3 feet below minor tidal flooding. So there won't be any areas in town that are going to see flooding from that. That's a typical high tide for in between the moon phases. And you can see the ups and downs for the next week. So it's important when we participate in this program to know when high tide is going to be, because we want to make sure, like I said, that we're documenting these photographs at the peak of the event. If we're taking the picture 2 hours before or 2 hours after high tide, it's not doing us much good. We want to know when it's at its worst. This helps us figure that out. And it's important to note that this is at 9th Street. So anybody that's unfamiliar with how tides flow into Ocean City, high tide, we experience high tide the soonest out on the ocean. The water comes in from the ocean at high tide. So let's say high tide today is at 4:33 p.m., I think that says, right? So about an hour before that, it's actually going to be high tide on the beach. And then the water makes its way in the Great Egg Inlet in between us and Longport and flows into the Back Bay and then flows into the Intercoastal Waterway and actually makes its way south, right? So if high tide is at 4:33 today at 9th Street, down at 34th Street, it's probably, what would you say, Roger, about 5 o'clock, about a half hour, 45 minutes it takes for the tide to get from 9th Street down to 34th Street. That's why when we have these flooding events, right, and I'm getting texts the other morning from, from 2nd and 3rd Street, and Marion Park doesn't, where I live, and Dave lives, doesn't have a drop of water yet, but I knew it was coming, right, because the north end of the island gets it first, and that's why it's good to have, the tide gauge that I'm going to go over at the Bayside Center. It's a good indicator for anybody that lives south of there as to basically what's going to happen. So that's the important thing. The first thing would be when we know a coastal event storm is coming, try and figure out when is the next high tide, and this is the best resource for that, okay? The next page is a link to the National Weather Service. And it's actually the first link under tide and flood level predictions. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Third level down, or third link down I'm going to go to. And this will kick us over to the National Weather Service, weather.gov. Okay. So just like the other chart said, today's tide is predicted to be 4 feet, and you see the same 4 foot on here. If there was a storm approaching, if I were to show you this same link last Friday, this time last week, it would show that the normally predicted tide that day was, let's say, going to be a 4.5. And then it would show what they call a departure, because the tide that they were predicting last Saturday was 6.5. So it would take, and by the way, the blue on the left are tides that have occurred. So that's documented tides. And the tides to the right in the sort of the purple dotted line, that's the predicted, those are the predicted next several tides. So where we are right now, like the blue line is halfway up. Like I said, the tide is going up. So that's what has happened, and the rest of it's in the future. Now, if a storm were coming, you would see this cone would look different. The cone would extend all the way up into either to the orange or the red, or sometimes in the worst case scenarios into the purple for, again, minor, moderate, major flooding. So this is consistent with the hierarchy that the National Weather Service classifies all of their forecasts in. So that's why it's important to look. So first chart was, what's the normal tide going to be with no storm? This chart is going to show us, under normal conditions are going to look the same, but if a storm is coming, those cones are going to be way up in the air. It's going to show you what they think is going to happen to the tide. Last but not least, we are lucky enough, and this chart, by the way, is tied into a tide gauge that we have, that we host in our Back Bay, that was installed by the USGS, United States Geological Survey. We're fortunate enough to have one in our Back Bay at the Bayside Center. So it's close enough to the 9th Street Bridge that they are basically, one and the same as far as the timeliness. And this shows, and I think it's the next page in your packet, if you want a closer shot of it. It's page 6. All the way to the right is where we are live right now. Again, tide is coming up, right? But it shows you about a week's worth of history. And obviously you can see this past Saturday, which was sort of an anomaly of a storm. We never really get a nor'easter that only has one peak high tide. Usually it's 3 days or 3 tide cycles of tides. And I think that's why that one was maybe underestimated a little bit. It's very odd that you have a storm that blows in and out, has one really severe peak high tide, and then everything returns back to normal that night. But that's what happened. You can see that this one peaked at 5 feet. Now, what you have to keep in mind is This reports in what's called NAVD. It's a different datum than mean low water, right? The real conversion is 2.06 feet, but for, I mean, just say 2 feet, and that'll get you close enough, right? So that tide, it's a peak above 5 feet there. So if you add 2, now you're converting it to mean low water. So where does that fall on the telephone pole? Right, it was a hair under this, right? So that's the only thing, and I'm sorry for the confusion, but engineers that measure home elevations for elevation certificates and build homes, they like to talk in NAVD, and fishermen and tidal people like to talk in mean low water. It's like 2 different dialects, so you just got to know how to kind of translate the 2, and the translate the 2 is 2.06 feet. Go ahead, Rick.
Let me add too, that mean low water is different. So if you're up in Barnegat Bay, and they got a foot or so of tide range, mean low water is, a foot. You go up in Manhorse Creek on the Delaware Bay, you had 8 or 9 feet. So you're mean low water. So mean low water is different from town to town, and that's why when things are tied into a local gauge, it's always expressed in the mean low water for that area. But when we're doing work statewide, like Frank mentioned, we work off of this NAVD, so you have to convert it all. But it's still the same thing, it's just where you put your 0 point.
Yep. Thanks, Rick. All right, so just to recap, 3 charts that I showed you. 9th Street, normal tide, no weather, right? What the high tide is going to be. And you will see some fluctuations in that depending on how close or far away we are from the moon phase, closest to the new moon and the full moons. Those, a high tide around full moon can get to 5 feet. Today's is going to be 4 feet, so you can tell we're a little further away from the moon cycle, right? So the moon does affect the tide, but obviously weather has a greater impact. So the first one is 9th Street, 0 weather. The second one is what the National Weather Service is thinking. For this past Saturday, they were thinking 6.5. So the second chart shows you the prediction. The third chart, and you could watch this. If you put this on your phone, watch this during a storm, because Dave and I do where we live, because we have to, right? I had water in my garage on Saturday, right? So did Dave. They were predicting 6.5. 6.5 is no big deal for me. It's halfway up my driveway. I mean, it's a big deal. I can't get in and out, but my garage isn't going to get wet. My threshold is 7. So when I'm watching that thing at the Bayside Center, and it got above 5, which if you add 2 feet is what, 7, right? Now I'm in danger. So I go downstairs, because I got a 45-minute warning from the Bayside Center to my house, and I start moving all my kids' stuff, all the bikes, all the way into the back of the garage, and sure enough, it came in by 3 inches. I mean, it is pretty much an exact science. That came in at 7.25, so it's right a quarter of a foot. I'm at 7, 3 inches, like clockwork, right? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how accurate this stuff can be predicted if you know where to look online. So it's really a combination of looking at all 3 factors. And just keep refreshing this on your phone. And there's another way to look at it too. There's a chart. If you don't like reading the graph, if you want to know the exact numbers, you just go up here and you click table and click go. And it will put it in numerical format for you, and you can watch the tide go up and down. Next thing I want to show you is some of the data that we collect on the city's website already. Let me close some of this stuff out. Because we have for a long time now been documenting flooding events. And this is a good resource that our engineering office put together a long time ago, and we've been updating it ever since. And the reason this is good is because it shows you how to convert between mean low water at 0 and NAVD at 2.06. So it kind of does the math for you if you ever forget the difference between the two. Here's low water, mean high water. Here's a spring high water line, right, the high tide line, and pretty much everything in between. Here's minor flooding, so that first red line, Anything above that is minor flooding, is going to show up on your first telephone strip, right? The second one, moderate flooding, there it is. Like I said, 5.3, 6.3, 7.3, minor, major, and then there's actually another category called severe, which is even above that. So there it is. I mean, that's basic. And then what we have on the left-hand side, we have the 10-year storm mark and the 100-year storm mark. We've actually never had, I don't say never, but in recorded history here in Ocean City, we've never had a 100-year flooding event. Sandy, for as bad as it was, and even though in a lot of people's minds it was a once-in-a-lifetime storm, or what they call a 100-year storm, and it was. I mean, it was this super storm that combines with another low pressure. It was the gigantic and lowest barometric pressure of any storm that had come up this high, and it's a freakish storm that comes at the end of October. All these different attributes made it a once-in-a-lifetime storm, but the reality is, I mean, we were a little south of the eye, so we got lucky. We're on the good side of the hurricane. We actually got a 50-year flooding event, and that's the highest one that we've ever recorded here, and it was 9.3 feet in mean low water. So what we just got this past weekend was 7.25. Sandy was 9.3. So put it in those terms. Imagine 2 extra feet of water on top of what we got on Saturday. That's what we experienced 6 years ago, almost to the date. Some of the other storms that have surpassed the 10-year mark were the November 2009 storm. We didn't get a chance to put this past weekend storm is actually going to be the first storm above the 10-year mark once we update this chart. It was a hair under the November 2009 storm. We had Winter Storm Jonas from a couple Januaries ago, Hurricane Gloria. The storms of the early 90s, one of those was the perfect storm that the movie was made out of, the Andrea Gale, right, the fisherman. 1944 hurricane, which was recently covered in a good article, I think, by the, was it by the Sentinel or by the Press? There was a really good article not too long ago in one of the local media about that hurricane. And the infamous Hurricane Sandy, like I said, the biggest one on the chart. Now, like Rick was saying, if you went to Ocean County and you looked at the same chart, Sandy would have been a 100-year flooding event, because for them it was. It was devastating, it was disastrous, but for us, being on the good side of the eye, and I like to remind this of people, we only got a 50-year flooding event out of Sandy. It was not a 100-year flooding event here. All right, that's one area where we document storms, basically anything that is hit above a 10-year mark. The next several pages is another thing that we've been keeping track of lately, and I give Doug Bergen, our public information officer. Yep.
Just for those of you who have elevation certificates, some of them you might have an old one, and you can actually do the conversion here. They have the new ones in NAVD 88 on the left side, and in the middle is NAVD 1929. So if you have an older house, this allows you to cross-reference.
Yeah, good point. Most of your elevation certificates, and that's where, like I said, I know what my elevation is. I have my elevation certificate. I refer to it all the time. My garage floor is at 7, right? But a lot of them report as 7 in mean low water, right? But it would be 5 if I converted to mean low water. But NGVD in the middle here, this green one, is what most of your elevation certificates are going to be in. So that's why it's important. That's why it's good that this chart has all 3.
The late 90s.
Yeah.
If your flood certificate was after the late 90s, you'd be in 88 date proper.
Yeah, surveyors nowadays are more putting it in this on the left-hand side, but a lot of your older ones are in the middle. But either way, it allows you to convert back and forth. The conversion between NGVD and NAVD is 1.25 feet for Ocean City. I say for Ocean City because that does vary slightly up and down the coast. The next, and this is where I think we're going to probably start putting your pictures when you start to send them to the DEP and copy to the city. And I give Doug Bergen, our public information officer, credit for this one. He sat down one day and just documented all these storms from basically worst to on down. And I highlighted some of them on here, starting on page 8, the infamous Hurricane Superstorm Sandy, October of 12. So what's nice about this is Doug put the measure in feet, mean low water, plus NAVD, so you can see both of them there, and a little description of what the storm, the attributes of the storm, right? So you can see all of them that I just went through that were above the 10-year mark. And then if you flip over to page 9, if I go down here a little bit, you'll see Jonas, and then anything that was around the major tidal flooding level, which is the 7.3. And we do have this past weekend storm on this one. So you'll see October 2018 nor'easter, October 27th, 7.25 mean low water. A coastal storm fueled by the remnants of a Pacific Ocean hurricane brings less than a day of strong onshore winds and the worst flooding in Ocean City since Jonas of 2016. Northeast winds gusting up to 55 mile an hour blew for several hours immediately prior to high tide. So each one gives you a little description. The reason I'm talking about all this is, last but not least, we want everybody to know when these storms are coming. So page 12, because obviously we want you to be prepared to be able to participate in the program and be able to go out and snap these pictures. If I go back to the city's homepage, which is ocnj.us, let's, I don't know how I scroll down here. I'm trying to get to the, here we go, I'm sorry. Alert me. See this button right here? This is the best one-stop shop for the next two things that I'm going to talk about. So when a storm is coming, the National Weather Service starts to put out their predictions and their warnings and their information. The city, between myself and Doug and the rest of us, are going to alert you in a couple different ways. And we use the National Weather Service hierarchy. The National Weather Service puts their weather alerts out in a three-phase approach: advisory, watch, warning, right? Advisory is like, it's a heads up, you know, you want to keep an eye on the weather, we think something's coming. Watch is, now, all right, now we've been watching this for a couple of days, it's getting a little more imminent that this is going to impact your area with some negative weather. A warning, this is definitely going to happen and you need to take action now, is in layman's terms what the National Weather Service is telling you by advisory, watch, and warning. If it's an advisory or watch, which are a little more watered down variety, we are going to send an email out to everybody that signs up for our service. So go to this page, type in your name, zip code, email information. You can check off anything you want. If you want planning and zoning agendas, or you want to know what's happening, or you know what the doodah parade's coming up or whatever, feel free. You know, you can sign up for any information you want, but we want you to check off at a minimum emergency alerts and information. That's how you're going to get our weather information, okay? Every time we send something out. If the event becomes more imminent and the National Weather Service issues a warning, and it could be a warning for any type of storm. It could be a coastal flood warning. It could be a winter storm warning. It could be a tropical storm warning, hurricane warning, winter storm warning. All right, there's all these different types of events, but when it gets to the warning level, I don't care what kind of storm it is, when it gets to the warning level, we are going to issue a reverse 911 call through Code Red. So the Code Red link is at the bottom here. We would like you to sign up for this as well so that you know what's coming. You can create a little account here. It's pretty neat. You can go in and you can actually, there's check boxes so you can get weather warnings to your cell phone if you want to. So the way this system works is we get all of your landline phone numbers through the phone company because we're a public safety organization. They give us that information because we're not going to use it for telemarketing or try and sell you anything. They know that we're only going to use it for emergency purposes. But we know that landline nowadays are probably we have the least chance of catching you at home. So what we'd like to do is gather your cell phone numbers, which we don't have access to. So if you go in and create an account here, right, give us your cell phone number, and you'll get a call on your cell phone whenever that warning hits, and we need you to know to move your car, take action, or what the event's going to be like. And then the last two pages, just real quick, I'm almost done. This was the last email alert that we, on page 13, that was the last email alert that we put out on Friday afternoon for this past weekend storm. And this is all the information that we share with you. National Weather Service issued a coastal flood warning, right? When would the warning take effect? When is the time of next high tide? What is the tide prediction? And, you know, obviously they were off on that one. They were predicting a tide of 6.5. It came in at 7.25. They're not perfect. They're darn good, but they do miss one once in a while, and they were off by 9 inches on that one, unfortunately. Where to find more information, ocnj.us/tides. Where to move your car to. If you want to take your car offshore, here's where you can go. You can go to Trinity over 34th Street Bridge. For your safety and protection of your vehicles and neighboring properties. Never try, no, we should put this one in bold with the amount of knuckleheads I saw driving through salt water the other day and driving too fast through salt water, but I'll spare you my sentiments on that. Never attempt to drive through flood waters. Do not drive around barricades, da-da-da, right? Wind advisory, gusts 45 miles an hour, flash flood, you know, everything, you know, non-police, you know, call emergency 911, not emergency, there's the police number, everything you need to know. Page 14, last but not least, gives you, when we do the reverse 911 calls, we take all that information and try and give you the highlights, right? So that's the cliff notes, because we don't want to keep you on the phone for too long. That's basically the paragraph that we use to call you up, and we're giving you the highlights and where to go for further information. Let me see if there's one other thing, because I know that Matt is going to talk about the weather conditions for documentation of this stuff. And if I go back to my OEM page, there's one other tool I wanted to show you. All the way at the bottom here. Oh, yeah, let me show you. All the way at the bottom here, we do have under the weather links. So you can get all your weather information right here too. We have Mount Holly, which is our regional office from the National Weather Service. That's the first link. Does anybody know the difference between weather.gov and weather.com? Weather.gov is the National Weather Service. Weather.com is the weather channel, like the channel that's on cable TV. Weather.gov is the official government weather source of information. That's where we're taking our information from. Not that I don't trust the Weather Channel, but they are a TV show. So they, you know, sometimes like to hype things up for ratings. You know, it's okay. But hey, we put it on here. They do have an excellent website. Their radar, I use it on my phone. Their live radar is one of the best products that's out there. But one of the things I wanted to show you was wind gauge at 59th Street. Because if you are documenting this stuff and you want to see exactly what the wind conditions are in Ocean City, you can click here. It'll take you right to a map of Cape May County. This is a company called Wind Alert, and we host one of their gauges at the south end of 59th Street parking lot. They call it Ocean City South Beach. They get us confused with Miami, I guess. And you can click here. You don't need a pro membership to get the basic information. You can click graph, and it'll show you. That's weird. The graph worked for me the other day without a pro membership. I'll have to look into this one a little further, but it would show you exactly the wind direction, the speed, the air temperature, everything that you might need to know about the conditions that day, coming right from our 59th Street parking lot. So that's all I had to go over. Thank you. Any questions?
I had one question that came up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's related, but when you were talking about the water levels at 34th Street, I was thinking how, like, you know, the inlet at the Egg Harbor Inlet, and you also have Forces Inlet. And they're both converging over there at the 34th Street area. I know because when I kayak, I ride to the beach and then I head out the other way. Does that have to make it higher than it would be at 9th Street because it's two converging points?
Typically 34th, right on 34th Street Bridge is
Yeah.
about where it splits.
Yeah, where it splits.
some of the tide gauges that Frank was showing, the rivers and harbors. If you go to the rivers and harbors, gives you a map of the state, and you can go right to the tide gauge that's closest to you. They have it's the exact same link that Frank was showing, so you can get to it different ways.
Yeah, we're fortunate the USGS gauge that we host in our back bay is one of the only ones that has a forecasting model to it. Us and Cape May are the closest ones. There's other USGS gauges in between. Stone Harbor, Avalon, Sea Isle have them, but they only show the live tide. We're fortunate enough to have the forecast right in our backyard.
Just quick on that, there's a group called the Silver Jackets, it's a Army Corps group, and they've got together, one of the projects they're working on now is they're working with USGS and New Jersey floodplain program and the Corps to come up with better modeling for this area between your gauge and the gauge down in Cape May Harbor. And they're trying to come up with better algorithms and formulas to figure out, just to pick out exactly what you noted, how the tide lags and changes and what kind of synergistic effects you might expect. So, not ready yet, but it's coming.
I'm sorry, I forgot to tell everybody because I'm just so excited that we're doing this, but I wanted to make sure everybody knows that Frank is our city finance guy, but also our director of CERT, which if anybody's interested is Citizens Emergency Response Team, also an amazing group. So that's Frank.
Yeah, I forgot to even introduce myself, so I'm the
That's my fault. And Roger.
So emergency management coordinator and also the director of finance. But yeah, we do have a CERT program that's part of our emergency management team. We basically look for volunteers to help us out during emergencies. It's an 11-week program, and the link is on the emergency management page if anybody's interested in joining.
And I've done it.
CERT members here today.
Yeah, and I did it in Virginia. It's a great program. I highly recommend it. And also, we have Roger. Roger works for the city. I forget what your actual title is.
Engineering.
That's right. Okay, so Roger's our engineering city guy. Also, we have Rick and Matt with us who are our DEP representatives. So that was, I just didn't do that right the first time, so I'm doing it again. So, Matt, get back here. It's all yours. Now for the DEP portion of our program.
All right.
Speak into the mic because it's being recorded.
All right, so I am Matt. I work for Rick at DEP in the Office of Coastal Land Use and Planning. This website that I put up really has nothing to do with flooding, but in the military, I did meteorology and oceanography as a career, so I am a weather nerd to my core. So if any of you out there are weather nerds at all, whether you're hiding from it or not, doesn't matter. This actually provides current conditions and 4 different resolutions of model conditions as well. One of the highest resolutions is 4 kilometers, with the standard being GFS at one of the higher resolutions, which means the higher the resolution, the less accurate the data. It gives you a good accurate picture of the entire US. But if you want to drill down into Ocean City, you want to use a tool that has a higher resolution, like 4 kilometers. So with that, this can tell you what the winds will be. It does have some layers for tides, and I do believe that it uses the tide gauge in Ocean City. If not, it does use one very close. So you can also get tidal information and all sorts of weather information from here. It's got a really cool weather radar that if you download this app on your phone, every time it lightnings, it will make your phone vibrate and shows a little flash on your phone. It's kind of cool. I'm a nerd, so. But I'll put that one up right now so you guys just get an idea of what it looks like. And you can also create a completely free account. So it gives a pretty good weather radar. And you can zoom in and do different things. I don't know if you saw down here at the bottom, but it gave a little flash for the lightning. And if you zoom into Ocean City, and it will give you tidal data and everything like that. So next I'm going to get into the presentation, and then at the end of the presentation I'm going to go into one of the tools that we're going to test out so that you guys don't have to print out paper every time, and you don't have to try to email a photo that might be too big or any other things that I know to me are a pain when trying to email anything. A lot of the volunteers that I have with throughout Coastal Keepers, with some of the other projects that we're doing, they ask me to mail them paper forms because either they don't have access to a printer or their printer doesn't work. And so I want to make sure everybody has access to these things and tools and is able to use them, because whether you have a laptop or a desktop, almost everybody now has a smartphone. So you do have a computer in your hand. So I will get to the presentation. Rick, do you have anything you want to add before I start?
Run over and grab the microphone.
You need your exercise.
So I want to give thanks to Suzanne for bringing us in, and I want to give thanks to Frank for bringing along, because this is a great opportunity here. The idea with the Coastal Keepers is to engage the public in citizen science and, you know, paying attention to things. One of the things that I think is really good about looking at flooding conditions is it helps from very different ways, because if we're able to more document better the amount of flooding, the depth of the flooding, when the flooding occurs, then that can do things like that can help the city if they need to go for grants to try and get things fixed up, or you're trying to figure out how much water are we going to have to design a pump to pump out. All this stuff is excellent in trying to prognosticate what's happening in the future and what's happening here now. One thing I want to keep in mind, all this stuff we're doing and the weather service stuff, they're all prognostications. It's all best guesstimates. And, you know, I'm fond of this idea of this is horseshoes and hand grenades. When somebody tells you it's going to be X, it's going to be likely X or close to X. And rarely are things right exact. And it's actually pretty interesting how accurate it is in your area. But one of the things you find as you go around is the projections of what's going to happen and what actually happened can vary one way or the other. And I think just take that with a grain of salt, which is great for the idea of getting better information about what actually does happen by you guys taking pictures, because we can do a whole lot with that information moving forward. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to volunteer and become part of this. The other thing I want to point out is we are piloting this with Ocean City, and we want to take this to other areas of the state. On Monday, Matt and I are meeting with representatives of the Sea Grant program up in Sandy Hook, and they're really excited about this. I think they would like to see how we could do this in other areas. So thank you for agreeing to participate.
Sea Grant also donated through Dr. Tom Harrington a water gauge for each of the schools for our
There we go.
program.
So things are moving.
Whatever I said.
The other thing I'll say is you may have a leg up on the rest of the state, because I think our commissioner has a summer home here. So.
Yes, she
Matt?
does.
Thank you.
All right, so like Rick mentioned, the overall from the DP aspect of it is called Coastal Keepers. So formally, I want to welcome everybody here to the Coastal Keepers. Besides getting emails and messages from Suzanne, I'll also send out emails, and I always make sure to say hello, Coastal Keepers, because to me, it's important to be part of a team, and that's exactly what we are. To me, we're a team, and we have strength in numbers, and we have, if we work as a team, that's when we are going to be our strongest. And so whether it's in the military or anything in my life, I try to do things as a team. So again, welcome to Coastal Keepers, and I will continue the presentation. So I went around town a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, I'm not sure how long ago, but we went and captured around 27 points using a funny looking stick with a GPS on it and some kind of dome thing on top. That gave us GPS coordinates for every point, and it also gave us the elevation for every point. So this will help us to place the bands at the proper elevations and heights, so that when you guys are taking the photos, it is an accurate depiction of the flooding. So here in the first ward, there's 2 points, point 24 and 25. So point 24 is along Asbury Avenue and 34th Street? No. Yes, okay, 2nd Street, sorry. And then 25 is a little further north. Is that North Street? Okay. Yeah. And there's more points in, the most points that we have is the 4th ward, and after that it's the 2nd ward. So here's the 2nd ward with, looks like 9 points overall.
It's important to point out that those points are there because those are us volunteers. The more volunteers we get, the more points we'll have.
So if there's other folks you know that are concerned and there is stuff, we can come, this is dynamic, we can change things and move things around, which is, that thing that Matt mentioned is an RTK unit, so we're actually able to come in and get elevation. So we don't necessarily have to have a telephone pole, but if we have something we can market to. So talk to your friends.
And what about like the students? Like once I get this word out, I mean, I see 100 students. Could I get them to all be a part of?
Well, they could do it at home too,
Yeah.
if they wanted to.
Like I'm thinking more of like a student-centered, like how should we get that to their families and get them involved? Because I have access to a lot of.
Yeah, well, we need to talk about that
Okay.
too, as part of this, but that's gonna involve being its own separate
Okay.
thing, I think, the
would be-
education part.
It would be good if you worked through Suzanne and then worked through that. And I think, is Tanya getting involved in this too?
Yes.
Tanya Ozanovich?
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, at any rate, one of the concerns we have is we don't wanna have an interface directly with young children and students.
Right.
We wanna have
It
whatever
would be
happens.
more of their parents signing
Right,
up
we wanna
for
have
it.
things go through somebody
Right.
before they come to us, so that's
Right.
why we're sensitive about that.
Right.
We can do that, though, I can make that work with you. Yeah,
Okay.
but also the school can each have their own project as well, and then if kids wanna take it home and make themselves their own project also,
Okay.
to carry over what they're learning in school and put it into practical application,
Okay.
then yeah, we can do that, that's
Okay.
easy, yeah.
I meant to mention one other thing too. That first band that's set on these telephone poles, in each neighborhood it's gonna be different. Sometimes it's gonna be here, and in some neighborhoods it's gonna be here. It's measuring the same level of water, but that means that the ground is lower in this neighborhood than it is in this neighborhood, and vice versa.
And just looking at the
That-
chart, you can see 21, 22, and 23, not likely even the middle,
Yeah.
and might not even show up
I
on
was
the
gonna say,
pole.
minor flooding at 3rd and Asbury, there's not water in the street. So you're probably not gonna have a minor tidal flooding marker at 3rd and Asbury. But once it gets to moderate, it'll start to penetrate that neighborhood.
And another thing we noticed too is, and as you see, there's different kinds of flooding out here. There's flooding that's related to the tides. There's flood that's related to, there's so much water has come down and the stormwater systems just can't handle it, and so it doesn't go anywhere. And then you have subsidence, you have areas that have sunk. And so you got all kinds of these, and some places are all three. So, when we came down, we have maps, and you'll see them up here that project where the flooding's supposed to be. Well, there's apparently some significant flooding out near the football field, and that is apparently related more to drainage than it is related to any tidal feature. So you could also have that feature too. Now,
And often, to your point there, is that when you have a bad rain event, it's coupled with a high tide, you'll see different condition than a low tide in the same heavy rain event. The conditions will be different.
Throw in a full moon, it's a party.
Yep.
Sorry, Matt.
No, that's fine. You guys actually just covered what I was going to do, so I'm going to keep going. Oh, no, that's all good.
I just want people to understand that these points are points that Matt and I put up there after somebody volunteered and gave me their address and we went out and looked. So the more volunteers we get, the more points we'll put on there.
Almost like you could recruit some people in the lower
Right.
areas as well.
Right.
Exactly.
And we did also, besides also the recruiting of volunteers, where we try to put these points close to where they live, there's also a point near each school. So there's one near the elementary school, one near the middle school, and one near the high school, so that if students wanted to take photos during class, if there is a flooding event, they can go to the nearest safe window, take a picture, and then give it, you're the teacher, to give it, either give it to you or another teacher, and then that way the teacher could then submit the photo. So that's also what we set up, and we based it off of the elevations of these maps. So these maps show, in the red, that's the lowest elevations, where you'll see minor flooding first. And then if you get up to moderate or major flooding, those are the areas that will be the deepest.
And also for the schools, since generally if we're gonna have a bad storm, you're calling off schools anyway. So the idea was to maybe put a cam kids could all monitor it from home, watch the tide come up, record the markings there as well.
Okay.
Nobody's,
And also though, like, like, I know I have families and students who would be very into this, to like, on their own, go out, like, that's why we'll
We
talk,
will. We'll
but
make
we'll
sure
set up
that
some kind
happens.
of dorm or.
I completely understand. In high school, I used to record the weather channels local on the 8s in a notebook, so.
So you know we got the right document.
Look, it is possible for a jock to be a nerd, okay? No. No.
The concerns we have is for the safety of folks. So we're trying to say, you're taking we know some people are gonna wanna charge out there, but from our standpoint, we want you to be safe. We want it to be from a safe location, so the idea of being able to have cameras on things for the kids, that'd be great.
Yeah, we don't need storm chasers.
Are there the other two teachers here?
Yeah, I am. I'm in the elementary school.
Oh,
Okay.
good, hi, okay, how about the high school?
He's not, but
Who is it?
Mike Amato.
Okay, we need to, the three teachers and Frank and Matt need to get together, and there's somebody else from the DEP, I'm sorry, need to get together and discuss specifically how we can, benefit the curriculum, add to and grow the curriculum. So I'll get with you guys separately, and we'll come up with a meeting date, and Matt has already said, and Rick, if he wants, have said they could come down, and maybe Frank could host the meeting at the city hall. Nothing like inviting myself over, right? So, we could talk about, or whoever, we could talk about, the cameras. We'll do it, yeah, that's true, it is. So, we'll do that separately, but as soon as we get this settled, I'd like to get that. Matt will give us the overview, and then we'll sit down and do that part, because we're gonna have to make it up as we go, and I wanna make it perfect for all the schools. So don't forget you have a rain gauge there you can take with you.
It'd be nice to get somebody on West 17th Street, and it would be nice to get somebody in that Pleasure area, the west side of Bay Avenue along Pleasure.
I'll try.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
I'll try.
Okay, so these are the points in the 3rd ward. And then the next will be the map of the 4th ward. And so this is also where we have points. And so the question is, how are we going to collect the data? How are we going to store the data? How's the data going to get from the collectors to the database into a report? So we're going to start out with actually 2 different options. The first option is a paper document that I developed. I did not bring it with me, but I believe I emailed it out this morning along with the monitoring plan. And so it just asks for some general weather information that is occurring at the time. It's pretty easy. You fill it out. If you're able to scan it and then email it to me. And then same thing with the photo. Once you guys take the photo, however you can email it to me. The email address for the program is coastalkeepers@dep.nj.gov. And the other option, who here does have a smartphone and who here actually enjoys using it?
There are 2 questions. I might just wanna ask one, and then.
Okay, well, who here has a smartphone? Who here enjoys using it? Okay. This might actually make it a little bit fun. So I wrote Survey 123 up here. It's an application that you can download. It's completely free to download. If you want to use the app, you will have to download the app. You can either download it from Google Play or the Apple Store, App Store. You will have to create a free account, but I mean, it is all free. It might take some time to set up the account. It's not a lengthy process. Once you do that, then you'll be prompted to what I'll show you next. So I'm going to show you guys the actual web link here in a minute, but with Survey 123, like I said, it'll require a smartphone. You can also do it on a tablet or you can do it on a computer. But the easiest method would be through a smartphone, because then you can take the picture and submit it at the exact same time as you're entering the data. So when you open the link on your phone, if you don't have the app already and you want to use the app, you'll see that here on the right, open in the 123 app. It will guide you to whichever app store you use, and then you can download it from there. Open the link back up again, and I'll ask and see if you want to download that survey. And then that way you can take the survey repetitively. Or you can open it up in your phone's browser, and it will look like this, very similar to what it looks like. And I'm going to bring it up so everybody can fully see it. And so it'll, whatever size phone you have, tablet, whatever, it'll use that web browser, and it works very well in the web browser, but the apps tend to work a little bit better than the browser usually, but still, either option is good. And so if you open it from the web browser, here's what it looks like. And also, this is the website for the survey 123. It does make the data collection, as long as the survey is really, okay. Does anybody know how to? All right.
So you have an app you can use this thing, eh?
Yes. So let me pull up the presentation so I can tell you what will be collected.
So what Matt's doing is one of the things, obviously, we're trying to do things, we're trying to move ourselves, drag ourselves into the 21st century by trying to use technology. So this is kind of an experiment for our guys. And Matt is great with this because he's an early adapter of all this stuff. So bear with us, we'll get through this.
So the survey asks only a few simple questions, and then it'll ask you to upload your photo, which you'll have to give it permission to access your photo library. So you take the photo first. You just put in your name, the date of the observation. It should auto-populate, but if it doesn't, just type it in. So if there's different flood types. It could be tidal, which is going to be probably 75% of the time that we're going to see, or it can be a rain event, which will probably be like maybe 10% of the time. And then there's both, which will make up I'm terrible at math, the remaining percent. Or if you don't know, that's fine. Just say you don't know. You just know that there's water in the street. Sky condition, is it sunny, partly cloudy, mostly cloudy, or overcast? Try to keep it, pretty basic. That way, if there is flooding, we'll know it's from something other than rain. It's something, or if it just helps us kind of narrow down what the cause of the flooding might be. Precipitation, okay, thank you. Rain, snow, or none. And we can get flooding from snow, especially with nor'easters like we had this past winter. And also, once the snow melts, more often than not, that water has no place to go, so that will also cause flooding. Just some general visibility information, fog, mist, haze, or none, which it'll be like just a clear day. And then the wind, is it calm, is it light breeze, or is it windy? And then if there's any other things that you guys might notice that you want to put in there, you noticed fish in the drain or something. Any other observation that you feel might be pertinent, and believe me, there's nothing dumb you can put in here. If whatever you feel is important, please put it, because that adds to our database and that adds to important information that we really do need. It'll geolocate your position as long as you give it permission to. And then that way, we'll also know which point you're at. And then that'll help us to basically build a report based on each.
The web browser lost connection to the screen. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the internet not working on this computer?
I brought up the web browser and it's not showing up there.
Maybe because there's two open at
Oh, it's probably still in the presentation technically. You probably have to go like pause it.
If you want, you can close
There
it.
you go. When you end it, it closes that out.
Just go to the app. You have to go to the app
Why
store
won't it
and
show?
type in survey 123. And
I've
it'll
never
come
seen it
right
do
up.
that.
Please submit for me.
And while he's figuring that out, so yes, with the application, you can either use it on the actual app or through the web browser. Who got the email that I sent earlier today? Do you guys recall if I put in the link, the web link at all? Okay.
Followed up with it again.
Yeah. So I will be sending that either later today or tomorrow.
Next week, tomorrow, Saturday. That's the day before.
No, but all right, fine. I'll send it Monday.
He's dedicated. He's very-
No link.
Um,
No link. Oh, wait. Just two PDFs here.
okay. So I will send the link that our GIS specialist gave me yesterday. So I will be sending that to you guys on Monday so that you can either open, like I said, open it up in the web browser or you can open it up in the app. I do strongly recommend using the app. At this point,
That was the email link. Yeah. Not a link to the app.
okay, gotcha. I'll resend, or I'll send it on Monday, and it'll bring you right up to it'll bring you to this right here, this picture that I have right here. It'll bring you up to that in your web browser. So if you want to stay in your web browser, just click on or tap on where it said web browser, or if you wanted to open the app, just click on the app part. I did bring 12 monitoring plans printed out in case anybody needed them. If you do need anything mailed to you, please let me know. I can mail things out. And outside of that, does anybody have any questions?
Did you say that email again was coastalkeepers@?
At dep.nj.gov. You're welcome.
Can you just run through a hypothetical so people can see exactly how to upload the stuff? That's what people are
Yeah, I was
asking me. Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
thought
no.
you were closing out.
No, until they can get that up, I was going to
Gotcha.
answer any questions.
So if you, after you worked your way through the app and you filled that out and it auto locates where you are,
Mhm.
you already have a picture. Theoretically, you would already have taken a picture.
Correct. Awesome. Thank you. So if anybody, like if you want to research the app at all before you download it or anything, it is an Esri product, which is the leader in ArcGIS products, mapping products. So here's the web page for it, and it's designed to be mobile. And that's the basis behind the Survey 123 overall. So if you choose to open it in your browser, so this is what it'll look like in the web browser, and it'll also look extremely similar in the app as well. So you just go in and you fill it out. So just for instance, I'll say title. Right now it's overcast outside. There's no precipitation. It's kind of misty out there. And just basic, I have mist and I think I have haze up there. Mist you'll mostly have during the fall, winter, or the spring. Haze will typically be during the summer months and doesn't really involve any kind of actual precipitation. It's just very fine particles in the air. Not too much difference than smog, but smog is pollution, haze is not. It's just a natural event. And then wind, it was It's a light breeze out there. Any other comments or observations? None. And then here's where you would, so if you were on your phone and using your phone's web browser, if you tap on this box or you click on this box after you've taken the photo, it'll, if you do it on a computer, it's going to ask you where you saved your file from. So if you did take the photo earlier in the day, you go back home and you want to fill it out on your computer, that's fine. If you saved it to your computer, then you can go to that file, save it, it'll upload it, and then you just select a certain file you want and hit open, and then the picture should show up in the box beneath that. And then observation location, that gets done all on its own as long as you give your device permission to use your location. And then once you're done, hit submit, and then that data will automatically go to Trenton, where I'll be able to review it, analyze it. And so the overall goal to collect all of this electronically is, it's nice that we have paper maps. It's nice that we have PDF maps. You know, you start with paper, then you go to PDF, it's electronic. We really want to have an online map service that not only benefits us from the analyzation and reporting standpoint, but it also helps you guys. So right now we are in the process of building what's called an AGO, or it's ArcGIS Online. And so that'll bring you to an online map once we have the website and everything. You can access it from your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your desktop, anything that really connects to the internet. You'd be able to access it. And from there, you'd be able to click on each point, and it would give you current data on each point. So if somebody had taken a photo and submitted a photo for a specific point, and you wanted to see if somebody had done that, you could go to that map, click on the point, and it'll bring up the most recent photo and any other information. We're still in drafting of it, so I don't know exactly what it will entail totally yet, but that's the overall goal of collecting all of this electronically through Survey 123, is it'll allow us to populate a online map that anybody and everybody can get the data from.
So then, we're also gonna be sharing this with, the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we need to think of some way that that happens easily as we move forward. Then that's what they would use for their planning purposes.
Right, and they would have access to the AGO, and I can also set up a OneDrive folder to where if you want to save your photos, that'll basically save to the folder, and then I'll have access to the same photo, and you know, that's another way we'll be able to share data. And then periodically I will develop a monitoring report based on all the observations that I get, whether it's Survey 123 or if people want to send in their collection sheets and photos and all that. I'll gather up the data, fill out a report, and then I'll share that report with Frank and Suzanne. And then after they've had a chance to look at it, then I'm sure that report could be disseminated throughout however needed or necessary. Now, does anybody have any questions?
Well, you sent out, that's what they're talking about, the OneDrive email address, that's what you had
Okay.
me send out the first time.
Yes.
So what is the preferred method for you? What's gonna be most convenient for you in the city, or doesn't it matter?
Right. I mean, honestly, like I would prefer if people use the Survey 123,
Okay.
but I don't want any, if you don't feel comfortable using it.
You know what, we're piloting this, so if this works and people think this works, we're gonna go this way. If people try it, it's too bulky, or it just doesn't work on their phones, or they don't like it, then we won't go this way, so.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, right, I just want to make sure everybody feels comfortable taking the observations, and whichever method works best for you, that's what works best for me. Yes.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm denied access. Do I need to join somewhere else to get into this survey? So I got the app.
Right.
I made whatever it is, my name. I signed in through Google, it's fast and easy. And then when I went in, it says I'm denied. Do I have to like join Coastal Keepers in order to do this survey, or?
You shouldn't have to.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Too, so.
So this is exactly the reason why we're trying this out.
right.
I was gonna ask you, like, you can sign in through Facebook or Google.
Yeah, I used Google.
I wasn't gonna do either. I was gonna create an account, but it doesn't really have a button to create it. If you have an account, you can sign in, but it doesn't really tell you where to go if you don't have an account to just create one. Gotcha.
I do Google,
Oh, in order to create an account, I'm sorry. In order to create an account, you'll have to go to the main Esri website, and then from there, create an account, and then that'll work for any Esri product.
So we need to give these directions out.
Right.
Folks understand this, right?
Right. And all those instructions I will put when I send the link to this. Now, you don't need any kind of account or anything if you do it through the web browser. Just click on the link and say you want to use it in the browser. You don't have to sign up for anything. But if you're a tech nerd like me in any way, shape, or form, I normally do all the extra stuff, but you do not have to.
If you do it on your phone, you do have to have a account for that?
Only if you use the application. If you have an iPhone and you use the Safari web browser and you go to I think I still have it up here. So if you go into Safari, and it'll come up like this. I don't know if you guys can see. So it'll say, do you want to do it in the web browser or do you want to do it on the app? Even though I have the app downloaded, I'm going to hit open in browser. And you don't have to sign up, or it doesn't ask for any kind of login or anything. It just takes you directly to the survey.
But it's been set up so it automatically populates with that thing,
Right,
Go through this other process. So
right,
If they open their phone up, they won't have to go anywhere, we'll just go right to it?
correct.
Okay.
Now, the only problem is with that, and which is why I highly recommend creating the account and,
I'm denied too.
okay.
It just isn't working for me.
We'll figure out the account part. Okay, we'll figure out that part, but you'll have to save the link, so that way when you want to do it again, you have it for next time. If you create an account and you use the app, it downloads that survey, and then all you have to do is just open the app and take it anytime you want. You don't need to worry. If you lose the web link, you don't have to worry about it. So if you want to use the browser and not create an account, just make sure you don't lose the web link, and if you do, email me and then I'll send it back out. And that's all I have. You're welcome.
So when can we expect the bands to be up?
Ship today, so it should be here next week.
And so then the question is, putting them up, that's gonna require, you're gonna need to know, that base
I am
elevation
not
and
gonna try to
measure
sit on
up
that.
with a meter stick or something, or yardstick, So that's good, they're not gonna all go in one day, right? That's gonna take a little time, right? Did you have any idea, would you move from one ward to the other, or any ideas on how?
See where our benches are, so pick a day and come down.
Yeah, I volunteered myself to help out.
Yeah, I'd like to be part of it too, just so I can let people know what we're doing. I'm not climbing the ladder or anything.
Actually, for
I'll
most, it seems like
supervise.
nobody's gonna be climbing a ladder.
I don't think so. I wish we were climbing a ladder.
Yeah, I'll supervise.
If we were climbing ladders, we wouldn't be here discussing this.
These badges being updated, I've noticed them there before, are we just getting more of them?
Badges?
Monitoring that you put on those poles?
That's an elevation 10.
You're talking about the
These are
discs.
new. They don't exist.
They don't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
What do I see on the posts?
You see a disc. You see a
Yeah,
round
I
disc.
used to see the long, going back to the seventies as a kid, I've never seen these badges like.
Are you talking about those discs at 10 feet?
No, not even discs. They were
These are-
badges.
They have like a pole number? That's how the utility.
Is that all?
Yeah,
That's
that's
just
how
the
the
pole
utility
number?
companies,
Okay.
yeah, like if you have a street light out, you give them the pole
And not
number.
elevation.
Yeah, exactly.
We were out looking at the poles, we found the benchmarks that the city has. We also found pole inspection stamps that people have done. And then there's pole numbers from the different companies. You'll have a pole that's a Verizon pole and a fall.
Yeah, we found a lot. So how big are these gonna be?
Wrap all the way around the pole.
Okay, so, and about how high?
They're a couple inches.
Okay, so they'll be clearly visible for
We're gonna set
everybody.
the bottom of the line, so if they're that much, we're gonna, like 6.3 is gonna be the bottom of the line, so you can read,
That's a good point. That's a good point,
and
okay.
it'll all be consistent.
All right, so is everybody clear that as soon as those bands get up, you can start without the bands being there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you could start taking pictures and sending them in,
Yeah, just
because
to get the
they'll be
idea.
geolocated, and we'll start getting more information as we go forward.
Plus, it's a good way to test it out to see if we're doing it right, or if there's any glitches in the system, like I can't get in, so I already have a glitch.
You're gonna give us like the exact address that folks are looking from, so like
Uh,
we talked about being.
Yes.
I had sent in the points. I think I sent a shapefile for ArcGIS, and I also sent it through Google Maps because I put it as a KML, KMZ file as well.
And it's an ever growing, I have 3 more to add for you too.
They're 2 inches wide.
Okay, so,
And they cost $1,000, so I'm saying the bill.
good luck with that.
You're gonna sell a lot of
I
cars.
got 3 kids in college, good luck getting that, I don't even have grocery.
Big
money.
sale.
We're very appreciative. Ocean City Flooding is extremely appreciative of the city being willing to partner with us on this, because you're taking our idea and bringing it to the next level, and that's exciting. Please start taking your pictures and trying to upload just so we can get the hang of it. And when the bands come in, I'll start letting everybody know, and you'll see me posting pictures on Facebook too, for those people that are on Facebook, and then they're telling. I'll tell you. So that you'll know exactly what's going on, when and where. But let's try it out first, and, Matt is gonna be in charge of that. So for the DEP, and Roger, and, well, who's gonna be in charge?
Frank's in charge, I'm just gonna set the points.
Oh, okay, so Frank would be in charge from the city, and I'm in charge from the flooding group, and then the schools are gonna be separate altogether, but we'll all come together into one big project that will be under you, I guess.
Okay.
Just to help people understand, I know I'm not making much sense.
No, it's
One thing I want to point out, we did these maps to show the street elevations, but I realize now there's a real problem with them, and that is, it seems to show that there's no streets in Ocean City that don't flood, and that's wrong. And I've since updating these things, and what we're gonna show is the different flood elevations. Now I'm gonna put the storm of record on, which would be the highest storm ever. And then everything above that, I can mark as no flooding information, or no flood record of flooding. But these things are fairly decent to give you an idea of what we're working off of. And these are also being piloted. We're checking these out to make them see what works and what doesn't work, so.
But the data that we provide will help with that as
Oh,
well,
yeah,
and then
this
the
is
whole
all-
state benefits.
Because basically, what all this stuff is it's prognostication. It's a guess. We have certain things, like the elevations are real elevations, but how high the water gets at any particular location depends on different factors. Just like, this last storm event, it was projected to be here, and it was actually there. All this stuff, over time, hopefully we get better at it. And in the end, though, it's more about letting people know, hey, something's coming, train's coming, time to get off the tracks.
It also helps us as a planning tool.
Move your car, right?
Planning tools, we move ahead with different development and different projects, so.
And, let's face, I guess I say this, nobody's leaving the shore, okay? And if you've been reading the New York Times or any of these things about the floods in Venice, you see people sitting in restaurants with water around their knees and ankles, it's kind of
That's
hysterical.
disgusting.
And I'm not saying we're there, and we may never ever get there, but, there's an affinity for this area. People aren't gonna walk from it, and there's billions of dollars of real estate. And so realistically, with all the investment and all the stuff here, with water coming up, it's important to understand what areas are flooding, so cities and communities can start to plan for these areas, as Roger says, understand what kind of projects are needed, where they're needed, and start to figure out what they're gonna cost, and.
And also through this program, I think we'll be eligible as a city, because there's citizen involvement, in grant money.
Well, it always helps. It always helps. And it's also, the more you can specify exactly what you're looking for with the more precision, the more impressive that is when you're going for grants, because you got real details. One of the things I mentioned this, I'll say it again. I was kind of stunned to find out that when the Weather Service says they expect X or Y, and they talk about what's gonna happen, that's not from any actual people taking recorded depths. That's just from what they've read in the newspaper or what they learned on TV. So it's all like kind of what they found out. So they don't, the Weather Service in Philly, all their stuff here, they don't really have really good, straightforward information. This is probably the first time we're gonna get that detailed stuff. So again, thank you for considering being part of it.
Yes.
I have a question. As, I live near the bay, and as the bulkheads have gotten better, we have a new phenomenon where flooding doesn't stop at high tide. It keeps on going for another hour or two while it still pushes its way up through storm drains and through bulkheads. So is that part of what we're following in this?
You would be seeing that. That's, you know, the,
Oh,
you know, but when I tell people, you know, years ago when they built the storm drains on the island, they didn't build them to fail. They built them to drain. But the water level has come up. So now what happens is, you know, some of these streets you can go look down and see fish in them, you know? So that's just what it is. And what that means is over time,
And the ground is settled on top of that, which makes it
so,
worse.
you know, over time, I think increasingly we're gonna see pump systems. So I think really in the end, you know, you can't get water to flow uphill. And as these areas get closer and closer to where the mean high tide is, you're gonna need the pump to get it out, so. And this kind of information is exactly the kind of stuff that Roger's gonna need to know. We kind of calculate to cost it out, so Frank can dig around and figure out where he can find the money to do this stuff. And I think the other thing this is gonna help with is when the city's going forth with capital projects, and let me say this, I was kind of stunned to find out that Ocean City has a capital plan. Many towns in our state don't. They go budget to budget with stuff, so it's actually very good that you're doing it here. But one of the things I think this can also help with is maybe make the idea of what areas need to be worked on first more transparent, because you have a better idea of which areas really are flooding the worst, which areas really are affecting the most property, or affecting the most part of our areas that we consider important. So I think maybe it'll help. Because, you know, if you got a problem, your problem is the worst problem. It may not be as bad as Suzanne's. My problem's worse than hers, and this will maybe hopefully level the playing field. You get better ideas. But where is it really bad, and how bad really is it?
And just the last thing I want to add is I know I put a lot of information in with the Survey 123, and I did send out the data collection sheets. If you guys can, starting tomorrow or next week, if you could try to use, at least if you have trouble creating an account, if you could at least use the browser, your web browser on your smart device, submit them that way as much as possible. That would be really good because that will help me map the data faster. But you have the data collection sheets, and if you need anything, please, please, please email me or contact Suzanne or Frank, and I will make sure that you guys have every tool that you need.
That's awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming out.
guys. If the teachers could please stay for after school for a minute. I would appreciate, thank you guys all very